Alright, today we're going to tap some trees. This is going to be a quick guide, not a fancy guide on how to tap trees. First thing you got to do, you got to have a special bit. Well, you don't have to, but this is one. This bit has little lines on it that tells you when to stop. It's important to have a sharp bit. Height wise doesn't really matter. I'm going up high because I'm running all the way down there to another tree. So pick a spot you like, slight angle downwards. Tap it in, good to go. This side, same thing. Pick a spot. Try to keep the bark and stuff from going in your hole. Tap it in. That simple. On to the next tree. One of the big things they tell you is try to stay away from a previous hole. So here you can see where it has been tapped last year. Try to stay away from that. I mean, you can see this tree has a giant hole in it. But it still produces. You should come over here and show. You can see where it's been tapped in the past. All these old holes. Try to stay away from them. That's probably the one from last year. So I'll usually try to stay at least 6 inches away from that previous tap. Just tap them in until they're snug. You don't need to hammer on them too hard. Always use a rubber hammer. If you use a regular hammer, you'll crack it. And then I just lay the lines right on the ground. Oh, I used to be worried about them sagging like that and think that it wouldn't run. But you got to remember that these trees are pushing the sap all the way to the top, to the leaves. So you don't really need it. It'll push it through those lines just fine. Run it over here. We got food grade barrels that I have cleaned out, and I just run them in like this. Usually I'll find a big rock or something to set out here to keep them from doing that. And then we'll go down and tap these ones. I do 3 taps per tree on these big trees. Smaller trees, smaller taps, or less amount of taps. Some people get real carried away and worried about keeping the lines perfectly clean and all that stuff. I do think that's important, but for a small operation, it's not as big of a deal as people make out of it. I'll usually let these run one time before. I'll let them run into the barrel once, clean all this stuff out of the lines. So yeah, one important thing too is you obviously need to have a hard maple tree. You can't just tap any tree. There are other trees that you can tap, but for the most part, hard maple. This is a hard maple tree here. You can tell by the bark, really. It's got heavy bark. And one other way to tell that a lot of people don't tell you is if you were wondering if this was a hard maple tree, a lot of hard maple trees have been tapped in the past. So you can look for the old tap holes. That's a good indication too. You can't use the leaves this time of year, obviously. So you kind of got to just know, once you learn, you see them everywhere. Try to spread these out. A lot of times people, you kind of want to tap on the side that the sun's going to hit first, is what a lot of people say. I don't get too carried away with that theory, but mostly they just say that so that way when the sun comes up in the morning, it hits them and thaws them out. Sap only runs when it gets cold at night and warm during the day. This was not ideal. I messed this one up a little bit. A little bit of and that's that. That one's tapped. This line's gonna run across the ground here. This is a hickory tree, so we're obviously not going to tap that. You see the shaggy bark. Actually, a lot of people shag bark hickory. We won't tap that one. So the other thing that's nice with this spot is it's right by the road. So I can pull in my truck, pump the barrel out, and go on to the next site. Got one more to do here. I just got to get the setup. These are, like I said, lines I had from last year. I try to keep them together. The worst part is making the lines. If you can keep track of where they were, a lot easier. I just kind of line these up so you get an idea where they're going to be. Here, here, here. One other thing they tell you is underneath a large branch like that is a good spot to tap, because you're going to have a lot of sap going up there. These big trees, it's a little bit less important, but it's one thing I do try to look for. I can tell by the sound when you hit them, tapping them in. You can kind of hear when they get tight. I tap pretty high mostly because all the old taps are down here. I'm taller, so I can reach up higher and tap a spot where it's probably never been tapped before. And that's that. We'll run these. This is the single line. We'll run that into this barrel. We'll run the ones from over there into the barrel. And we'll actually have, we got 2, 3, 4, 5 trees into this one barrel. And that just makes collection a lot easier. Some people use 5-gallon buckets. When I first started tapping these trees, I'd just have a 5-gallon bucket with 3 taps into a tree, or into a bucket. And then you'd have to go from bucket to bucket and pick it all up, which really sucks once you start getting a lot of taps. So here's our final setup here. Like this tree here, anything this size and smaller, I'm usually doing 2 taps on. Tap on each side. Got your plastic tap. Comes down 5/16 line to a T. And these all just push together. You don't need a tool or anything. You can cut this with your pocket knife. Push these together. That's how I do it. If you have 3 taps, you got to have 2 T's. And then down to the next tree. That I put a little drop on. You don't need to do that. You can make this shorter. But being that was a little high, just worked out that way. Now we just have this line running across here into our barrel. This one's got to go in there still. She'll cinch that up. And that's the other thing. If they make a coupler too, if you cut the line, I've cut it in the past. You just couple it back together with one of them, push it together. No big deal. Like I said, I used to always be worried about running it this far. There's no way it's going to run as good. Maybe you lose some, but for what you lose, you gain in efficiency when you're picking up. One tree through this line, T down here, goes to the next tree, and then this one's all up top here. Tap, T, tap, T, tap over to here, down the line into what you could call the main line going to the barrel. So this is our other setup. Just wanted to show you guys quick. I got a main line running on this system. This was actually already here. I took it over. Somebody else had set it up, but it's kind of neat to see different ways of doing it. Each run ties into the main line with one of these splices. This is 1-inch line with a piece of wire that actually holds it, and then it's wired onto there. That's what keeps it tight. The weight's actually on the... This tree actually fell on it. Knocked it down. I had to cut that up to get it off. As you can see, some of these trees are not doing so great anymore. But we got quite a few in here tapped. Just on 5/16 line. They come down and go into the main line. Main line goes into the barrel. So it's kind of a neat. This just allows you to put a lot more trees onto one line. There's probably 20 trees on this line at least, probably more. And it's been broken, and I got it just kind of sitting up in spots, propped up. It's not in the best of shape anymore, but you can see got a couple trees here tapped down into the main line. And as you go up through here, it keeps going. That's the last one on that small line. These are all obviously hard maples up through here that are tapped. Kind of just keep showing them to you guys so you can get an idea of what they look like if you don't know. Some of these trees have seen better days. They are starting to die. They're old. They've been tapped for a lot of years. They were that way when I started tapping them. like this one. Pretty well dead. It's falling down. So what I wanted to show you though, this is the top of the main line. We got a couple runs coming in. You can actually see the sap in there. And then these smaller lines continue up here to these trees. All the way up to the last two. I tapped these yesterday. They did run some. We dumped it. I like to come up and check just to make sure it's not leaking anywhere. Cool old doodle bug over there. That's been that long time. Kind of neat though. That tree's actually grown up through it. That's pretty cool. How that tree's grown up in there. Actually had two transmissions in it. There's one there, and then it comes back to another one here. It's kind of interesting. I don't think she's in the best of shape anymore, but it's still a neat piece of history. Anyways, back to the sapping business. So yeah, pretty much it. Main line runs down, all these trees are tied in, and it goes into the barrel. Just a different setup. Instead of doing 5/16 line, doing it this way, you can tie a lot more trees into that main trunk line and still get good flow.